Hi, everybody out there that's joined us for this session. Now, what we're actually doing, because unfortunately at InfoSec World, we're going to be doing this live, but there won't be a recording available. We figured we'd do a recording in advance and see how that goes. So at least that we can get it out there to as many people as possible. They can check it out. Hopefully the information is useful. With the Q&A section that we would normally do and we'll be doing at InfoSec World. We welcome you to message us, to connect with us on LinkedIn and ask any questions at all you've got. We'd love to talk them with you through with them directly. So thank you everybody for joining. Hopefully I'll be able to actually get my words out at the conference. That would be important. So first off, we'll just do introductions. And of course, I get a whole page to myself, because I'm the moderator and I'm not going to speak as much as you guys. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tyro Security. We're a cybersecurity and professional services company. I'm involved with the Cloud Security Alliance, have been for quite a while. Also an advisory board member to the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Centre, which is a non-profit, and also founded Gracie, which is GRC for Intelligent Ecosystems, another non-profit focused on bringing more diversity into our industry. So I guess when it comes to cybersecurity staffing, a lot of people tend to turn to me, and I get involved with having a lot of talks and speaking at a lot of conferences, which I absolutely love. And so if anybody wants to talk hiring, retaining, anything like that around cybersecurity staff, I'm always available. So thank you very much. Without ado, I should hand you across to people that are far more important and have much more interesting stories than me, our panelists. And so first of all, let's start off with Joy. Joy, would you like to give us an introduction, please?
Absolutely, Kris. Thank you. My name is Reverend Joy Williams. I go by Joy, so that's what you can call me. I'm currently a cloud engineer with Sirius, who's a CDW company as of last year. I started out, spent close to a decade working in call centers for different telecom companies, and then joined Sirius through their academy program about 3 years ago. Have gone through several different roles and have been in a staff augmentation role for security for a Fortune 500 company for the last year and a half.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Gunnar?
Hey, thanks, Kris. Hello, everyone. My name is Gunnar Kalstrom. I'm currently a C&D cyber analyst with a great company called PeopleTech up in northern Alabama. Before I got into cybersecurity, I was in the Army for about 15 years. I was a guitar player in the band, totally unrelated field to cyber. A couple of years ago, I decided I wanted to become a civilian again and decided cybersecurity was the route that I wanted to take. I did a couple boot camp training programs that really helped me go from almost no cyber knowledge to being able to get my first cybersecurity job about 8 or 9 months ago, and just loving it. So that is me.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Gunnar. I appreciate that. I love the story. Just that thought process I've got with you and your rifle tucked into your guitar case. Yeah, I can't get it out of my mind. Okay, Nick, over to you.
Yeah, hey, I'm Nick DeMeo. I'm currently a cybersecurity specialist for a giant MSP called DAS Health. And before that, just did a lot of odd jobs, mostly construction. Finished carpentry was the thing I did for the last 5 years. And then I decided to switch into cybersecurity. So I did what any other awesome husband would do and spent their down payment on a home on college tuition up front. And haven't looked back and been full in, and I had some success with getting my ISC squared certification, the SSCP. So everything's going great, and I'm excited for the journey and what the next place in my life's going to be.
And of course, finally, Amanda, across to you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Liking. I have a background in quality assurance engineering. About 2 years ago now, I joined the Next CISO Cybersecurity Apprenticeship Program. After I passed through that, I was able to get a really good foundation with GRC. I had the highest CCSK pass score in my class, and after that, I was able to get my first dedicated GRC role. Since then, I've been laid off, and I'm back searching again.
Did you hear that, people? Amanda is available for work. Quick, snap her up. By the time I actually publish this this talk, she might not be available any longer, but the only way to tell is to reach out to her. So actually, we're gonna run through a few questions now, but actually, rather than leave it on this page, I'm gonna leave it with all of our connection and contact details there. So you'll see some of us use Twitter more than others. I've got to say, I do have a Twitter, but I'm absolutely terrible at using it. But we are absolutely all on LinkedIn, including Amanda. So reach out to her if you've got something in mind for her, please, please, please. So let's leave this up here and let's go through and go through a few questions that we had prepared. We had a few people ask us them in advance, you know, and I think the stories that we're going to come up with today are really useful for people that are looking to get into the industry, people that are finding it challenging, that need a lot of advice and tips. And I see a lot of emails reaching out around that and a lot of messages on LinkedIn asking those same questions, but also probably for line managers and hiring managers to see what entry-level people are going through and what you can learn about your process and what can really help you find the best of the best, because they're out there. You just need to give them a chance. So let's start off and we'll speak to Joy first. And I want to ask each of you, what made you choose cybersecurity?
For me,
Joy, you there? There we are. Yeah,
I'm here.
Was it the classic mute? I was going to say, there's all.
Absolutely.
Of course it is. I mean, it's not. You know, it's not a Zoom unless you've talked on mute at least once, right? That's my rule.
Exactly. So cybersecurity for me was a little bit of a long winding path to get to it. About 10 years ago, as I was working in the call centers, I decided that I wanted to move into the IT or more technical side of things. And I reached out to a friend of mine from high school who'd been in the IT industry in video games for 20 years and asked him what he would recommend. And he told me at the time that virtualization, cloud, and security were the biggest growth areas that he saw. So looking at those, going back to when I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer or a detective, and then spent time as a military spouse as well. And all of those kind of wrapped up into the decision to choose security as my focus. And it's been a great decision. And at the time, it was also one of the few programs that my employer would pay for.
That helps. Good, amazing. Yeah, it's such I'm so passionate about it. I've been in the IT recruiting field for like 20 years, but just from a cybersecurity point of view, it's been 10 years now since I started Tyro Security. Before that, I dabbled in a little bit. It's just so interesting. The people are so passionate about it, and it kind of gives me that feel of being a bit of a kind of mixture of in a James Bondy, Sherlock Holmes world. I don't know. That's my thing anyway. Anyway, it's not about me. It's about you guys. I need to shut myself up. Gunnar, how about yourself? Why cybersecurity?
So for me, I had a great career in the Army as a musician, and then I just made the decision that it'd be best for me and my family to get out of active duty Army. Moving around every 2 years, you know, that was one of the reasons I wanted to become a civilian again. Just move to one place and plant some roots there. So after I decided to change careers, I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. And I didn't know at first. And then when I was going through the transition assistance programs in the Army, they kept pushing cybersecurity pretty hard, saying it's a great career. You can potentially have a high salary. It's challenging, and everything I heard about it kind of resonated with me. So I looked into it, and I decided that would be a good path, good career to pursue. And one of the best decisions I've made. It's been going really well so far. It's challenging to get into it, and a challenge while you're in it, but it's definitely worth it.
Good. Thanks. And Nick, how about you?
Yeah. Thanks, Kris. Yeah, it's kind of strange, you know. Cybersecurity has kind of been in my whole life, just didn't know it. Being a small kid growing up, I got bullied and started hanging out with some outcasts, and I kind of saw that they kind of fought back by hacking, and the way their mind works was always very curious to me. So I would kind of just hang out with them and watch them do stuff. And I was always curious, and it never dawned on me, that would be kind of a career path for me later on in life. But obviously when I jumped up to 6 feet and kind of got into hockey and stuff, I went away. But I don't know. It's kind of just always been there. I feel like I have a good sense of paranoia and preparedness, and it's kind of like where does that fit in? Like what field would really excel at having those traits? And as soon as I took a look at cybersecurity, I just jumped in with full speed. When I was in college, I was like, wow, I can't believe it took me this long to get here. This is the industry for me. So it's been full steam ahead since, and just not looking back.
Great. And disclaimer, Nick never did any hacking himself.
I never actually did. I never did.
Definitely only watched others, 100%. Okay, we got you. Amanda, how about yourself?
For me, I was sort of talked into it. One of my mentors is one of the founders of Gracie. It's the foundation that you were talking about earlier that you helped get together. So they invited me to an apprenticeship. They just kind of told me what it was about. They told me that, that they were looking for mostly women of color and people who they wanted to have fill this sort of skills gap and this sort of racial and gender disparity that exists in the industry. And they asked me if I wanted to come join the apprenticeship. And I said, sure, why not? It was free, decided to check it out. And once I got into it, I realized wow, this is something that I'm really into. There's so many different directions to grow into. And cybersecurity is definitely, it's a direction that you can go where your career can continue to grow. It offers you a lot of security in your own your growth in your career. So after having gone through the apprenticeship and doing really, really well at it, I decided this is something that I need to stick with. This is something that I'm good at, and that's how I got into it.
Great, that's brilliant. And actually, hot off the press, last night, Gracie won DEI Initiative of the Year at the Women in IT Awards. So go Gracie.
Awesome job.
There you go. Yes,
Nice.
Well done, Janai and Melissa. They're my co-founders, and honestly, they run the thing. They make it happen. So I'm delighted that I'm even named as a founder. I think it was started. I was helpful in the idea, but never. But really, the ongoing stuff is all down to them. So yeah, well done. So sorry, taking that off into a different direction. So following up on our next question, and with this one, I'd love to start with Gunnar. What was your particular job hunting strategy?
Okay, great question. For me, I'm a planner, so I had a very specific system that I used to go about for job hunting. First, I created a master resume with all of my experience going back about 10 years. And then I chose my top 2 type of roles that I wanted to pursue, which was junior penetration tester or cyber analyst. So I was seeking offensive or defensive roles. Made a list of the top 20 to 30 companies that I was interested in. And then I attended a cybersecurity conference and a job fair. I thought it'd be a good idea to meet face to face with some of these companies. I brought copies of my resume to give to all the hiring managers. And then I did a lot of networking just through LinkedIn, calling people on the phone, asking for advice. And then I started applying about 3 months out when I knew I was going to be out of the Army. So I thought that would be a good window to start actually applying for jobs. And then I did about, so at first I just kind of threw my resume out there, and I realized that wouldn't be the most effective way to apply, I thought. So I started tailoring my resume and applying for about two jobs per day with a tailored resume, and that seemed like a lot more effective way to apply for me. So that's kind of my job hunting formula that I used.
Nice, good. And I know there's some similarities, but also quite a lot of differences as well with yours, Nick. Do you want to mention a little bit about your job search?
Yeah, so I appreciate the planning that Gunnar has. Me, on the other hand, playing hockey when you're up against an amazing goalie, sometimes the best strategy is just to shoot the puck as many times as possible, and eventually something will go in. So I kind of took that approach, a little bit more structured than that. But I set a quota for resumes. Every day I wanted to at least have about 5 to 7 applications filled out. Consistently. I was kind of I took a couple of different job titles and just did a wide net. And about a month and a half of doing that, I finally started getting some callbacks, interviews, and was able to get my first IT job, which fortunately for me transitioned into a security role and then helped me get the current role that I'm in.
Brilliant. Lovely. And Amanda, how about you?
For my first dedicated role that I had, I actually sort of engineered that role myself. After I came out of my apprenticeship, I started a job at a small agency, and I was just, getting a job basically to be able to pay the bills while I was looking for a GRC role. I started there as a program manager. And when you're doing that, you really have your eyes on everything and your hands and everything. And while I was there, I saw, there were just things that were glaringly out of compliance, and it just really bothered me. So I couldn't help myself. I decided to make a deck. I went to the CEO and I said, these are the things that are out of compliance. These are the areas where we have a lot of danger. I think that I could offer a lot of help, and I could be really helpful if I were able to be in a position where I could maybe help introduce an ISMS to the company. And that way you're not only going to be protected, but you'll be able to bring in bigger clients. You'll be able to bring in like the Amazons, the Meta, things like that won't look at you if you don't have an ISMS in place. So I was kind of able to engineer that role by creating that deck and kind of just telling him, here's what I could offer you if you would allow me. And he decided to go with it. And that's how I created that initial role. So just kind of looking around and being brave enough and believing in myself enough to say, hey, I can actually do something really helpful for this company. That's how I was able to make that first role. Now that I'm looking for a job again, I've been really just relying very heavily on my network that I've built over the past 11 years working in tech, and just really relying on LinkedIn and all of the people that I've met over the years, putting in resumes where I know people working for these companies so that I have someone to back me up. And that's mostly what I've been doing.
Great. Yeah, good. I love that, like, each person's got quite a different story. Joy, how about yourself?
Definitely a bit different. I have to admit that I identify a little bit more with Nick's strategy than the others, because I was definitely not organized. I don't know if I even really consider myself to have had a strategy when I started out. When I first started looking, the call center that I worked for was closing, and I really wanted to stay with the company and was only about halfway through with my master's program. So I put in 147 applications over the space of 2 or 3 months, had a bunch of interviews, and ultimately just wasn't able to find something that worked because I wanted to stay home in the area. I didn't really want to move. And so I took some time, finished the last couple of classes that the employer was paying for, and then I started looking through Glassdoor and LinkedIn, and I came across an ad for the academy program with Sirius, and it looked like it had already started, but I thought, it's still there, what the heck, I'm going to go ahead and apply. So I did, and was surprised when I got a call from the recruiter. But within a week, I had a signed offer letter and was planning my move to Chicago for 6 months. Once I got to Sirius, the academy program was great, and if you have questions, ask me. But once I got to the academy, I became an advocate for myself, and it was more organized, it was more structured. I put in a lot of time and effort networking with people within the company and talking to people in areas that I wanted to go to, because my first role was not in security. So I advocated and managed to network my way into different security related projects within the group that I was in, until I finally ended up with the role that I'm in now, doing cybersecurity.
That's amazing. I think the fact that you kind of upped, picked up sticks and upped, like, you know, your whole family for 6 months to grab an opportunity it says a lot about what you've done. And I think one thing that a lot of people forget is you do need to dedicate yourself to what you're doing, right? You might have to make sacrifices to make it happen. And I think each of you have got kind of a different story about what you've needed to do to make it happen. Lots of networking, you know, going to talking about going to different conferences, taking resumes with them. Obviously going to the local chapter meetings. I would really recommend joining any chapters, joining any meetups, even if you haven't got a local security meetup, do you have a local technical meetup or something like that you can join. With Nick, you know, that, and even with yours as well, Joy, that, you know, that getting as many numbers out there as possible. I love the saying, which is that you miss every shot you don't take. And I definitely think that there's a lot to be said that, you know, you do need to put in the hard graft. You do need to put in numbers, and there's an element of that. And then if you mix that up with Gunnar's sort of tailoring his resume for every role and taking a bit more of a dedicated, right, I might not have the time to apply to everything, so I'm going to really structure my resume so it's more tailored towards the stuff I am going to apply for. And then Amanda, just, you know, sometimes you've got to grab the opportunity and make the most of it. So you have to go in, you have to maybe go in and take a position that isn't initially in cybersecurity, and then see what your opportunities are, or have conversations about, you know, what your opportunities would be during those initial interviews in the future. Let them know what you're interested in. And if you can spot, especially within a small business, you're really adding value if you can spot opportunities where they can, you know, make themselves more secure, especially as you can do it without a huge amount of spend, right? So if you're going in there with that experience and you take a role that isn't in security, but then look for opportunities for you to do security-like work, that's an amazing way to gain experience and to get into a dedicated security role. So I love the fact that you all have so many different stories on that. Now, once you've got your job hunting strategy down, you've got an interview request, the next thing is, how do you prepare for that interview? And I think, you know, I'm going to start with Nick, because I already know what Nick's answer to this is, and it's very interesting and quite fun. But also I want each of you to sort of tell me a bit about what you did to prepare. Nick?
Yeah, thanks. So practice makes perfect. So it's like, how do you prepare for something unless you go do it? Well, there's multiple ways, and actually one of those ways is a really cool game. I think it's called Unemployed, and it's you can turn it into a drinking game or not. But essentially, you know, you get like a role, and the other team you have to interview based on, you know, some ridiculous qualifications or character. And what that does is it really just forces you to think on your feet and improvise quickly. But it's in a fun environment without any judgment, and obviously you don't have to worry about losing a job or messing up an interview, and it gets you very comfortable with talking to people and answering questions you may not know the answer to, or maybe you just lose your thought and you're like, oh man, what do I do? The more comfortable you get with that scenario is, you know, is just going to benefit you when you get to the interview. And then you realize it's really just about starting a conversation than it is trying to survive an interrogation. And once you get that calm, collect, and realize that, you will just ace right through interviews, and that'll just be one less hurdle in your way to getting your job.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, do you know what? I was Googling it. I think I found it was called Fun Employed. And it definitely is kind of, the idea is it is kind of ridiculous, you know, the jobs and the things you have to practice for, but it really does get you thinking on your feet. Now, when I say ridiculous, maybe it's not as ridiculous as having an entry level role that requires a CISSP, because that's really ridiculous, right? But it does have some like really ridiculous stuff in there, but thinking on your feet and having to answer questions you're not expecting, if you're used to doing that, when you get actually in a situation where you have to do it, you're much more comfortable with it. So yeah, I love that answer. Amanda, how about yourself? How did you prepare?
For me, again, I usually lean into my network. So I'll go back to my mentors. I'll take my job description with, take the job description with me, and then we'll do mock interviews. Another thing that I like to do is I will take interviews for jobs that even jobs that I know I'm not gonna actually want to take if I'm offered it, just so that I can get the practice in and see what kind of questions I'm going to be asked, see if there's any commonalities between different interviews, and just see if there's like a baseline, just something to be ready for. So that's definitely one of my one of the number one things I do is I just take as many interviews as humanly possible and just see how much practice I can get from those.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said, because like you might take a role, you might look at a role and say, I think I've got other roles that would be a better fit for me, or I'm not sure whether this one's right. But by taking an interview, you at least get to have a conversation. And I can't tell you, you know, I have set up interviews for candidates for roles that they've like, okay, you know, I've got 4 or 5 interviews going on. I ask, where does this sit? They might be, oh, it's kind of number 3. I'm not sure. You know, these are the reasons why. And then they go for the interview, they come out of it and they're like, this is my number 1 choice. I can't believe I can do this, this, and this. And this wasn't in the job description. And, you know, until you take that interview, you don't really find out what it's all about. And I can tell you, you know, job descriptions are often nothing like the actual job, right? Yeah, so one of the reasons why companies find it so hard to find experienced people is because job descriptions aren't done very well. So, you know, taking opportunities give you the opportunity to see, and also give them the opportunity to meet you. You know, then maybe they might say, do you know what, we've got something else that's more suitable for you. Whereas if you don't take it, you'll never know that. So that's a really good point. Joy, how about yourself?
So my preparation was research. Anytime that I applied for a job, especially when I was going to interview, I'd look up information about the job, the company, the hiring manager where I could. I would reach out to hiring managers for jobs above what I was interviewing for to find out what they looked for, the skills, the experience, and what kind of questions that they asked in interviews. And then I kept notes on each of the jobs I applied for and interviewed for, and wrote out answers for the typical STAR type questions. Writing down the questions, or just having questions in general, was probably the most important thing for me, especially within Sirius. With getting to the Academy program, I made a point to look up each person that I interviewed with on LinkedIn, and then I would find something on their profile somewhere to ask them about, so that it showed that I was looking at the details. I was engaged and interested not just in the company and the role, but in who they were, because you know, it's about interviewing the person that is going to be hiring you as much as they're interviewing you. So within the company and looking for projects, it was the same thing, just doing the networking and reaching out to people and finding out what they recommended and incorporating that into the next one.
Love that. Yeah, open source intelligence, so important to go out there and kind of get your OSINT done, try and get as much information as possible on not only, you know, the company, but the people you're going to be speaking to, especially as you might find some common ground that turns an interview much more into a conversation. You know, if you've got lots of questions to ask, then it makes it feel like much more of a conversation rather than an interview. And people, as you can tell, including me, love the sound of their own voice. So asking questions and giving them a chance to talk, you'll be surprised how many people come away and they're like, that was a really amazing interview. And you know, it's because they did all the talking. So, you know, if you can get the actual hiring managers to do the talking, then, you know, you're onto a winner. So that's amazing. We've covered a lot of great stuff. Gunnar, what have you got to add to this? This is a tough gig.
It's tough to follow everyone else. I wish I had that game that Nick used to prepare. That sounds fun. I did a few mock interviews, like some of the others have mentioned. I just went on Google and I researched common interview questions. So I wasn't really sure what to expect. And I just tried to make sure I had an answer for any type of question they might throw out at me. But then when I got to the interview part of the company I was hired with, it was more of a conversation, like you were saying. It was basically a conversation with a hiring manager, conversation with a supervisor. And I think one of the biggest things that can help people is staying confident. And one way to do that that helps me is like a 10-minute meditation and some deep breathing before the interview. I was talking with someone recently, and he was nervous in his interview, and he said that he kind of bombed a really simple question And I think it's just because nerves got to him. So staying calm and collected will help you out quite a bit. And then just sell yourself to the hiring manager.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of the meditation thing. I only found it relatively recently, and for me, especially before talks and things like that, when my heart rate's sort of really up, and it doesn't matter how many times I've practiced a presentation, you know, I'm still sort of jazzed to get up there and get it done. And having a meditation just slows everything down, slows down your thinking, you make less mistakes. So maybe I should have done one before this. But that definitely helps. And I think you and Joy mentioned questions. That preparation of having some questions prepared to go in there, not just general ones, you know, but specific ones to the people. You know, if you're seeing 4 people in a panel, ask each one of them, what's the reason, you know, why did you join the company? What keeps you here? What's the most exciting thing about your role? Just understanding what the exciting parts are for them. They love to talk about, and it's good for you to hear, and it gives you a bit of insight, because don't forget, interviews are a two-way street. And I know, especially when they're entry-level roles, people are so excited and in the hope that they're going to get their first opportunity, which, you know, 100+ applications, right? You work hard to get that, that they forget that it is two-way, and you want to make sure you're not jumping into a position that you're not going to enjoy. So yeah, let's talk. There's a lot of hard things about getting into cybersecurity as a whole, and I'd love to hear each of you what you found the toughest things were. If we start with Amanda, what was your hardest part of getting into cybersecurity?
I think the hardest part was probably just the level of dedication that it took to be able to get through studying and making sure that I got all of the certifications that I wanted. There are a lot of times when I got a little bit down on myself because, you know, failure happens. You know, you don't always pass all of those certification tests, you know, on the first try. So sometimes I was like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. But so I think the hardest part for me was keeping faith that I was in the right place, and that, you know, even though I didn't maybe pass this or that test on the first try, that if I just kept at it, I would be okay, and that I would eventually get there. So yeah, I think definitely making sure that you just keep belief in yourself and not being too hard on yourself. That's got to be what was hardest for me.
Yeah, it's a tough gig. You know, I think there's a lot of people out there that are really struggling to do it, and you've been through it. You struggled really hard, got yourself an opportunity, and now you're having to do it again, right?
Exactly.
Having that confidence and belief, you just got to keep doing it, keep going. Especially for you, you managed to do it once, so you know you can do it, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so I think that helps, and there is an opportunity out there for everyone. Just, you know, you got to believe, and you might have to flex around what things you're exactly looking for to make sure you find it. But yeah, keep the belief going. Joy?
For me, the hardest part was being patient. There's so much to learn and so many different aspects of cybersecurity that getting to a point where I understood that I don't have to know it all, I don't have to learn it all at once, and then taking that realization and figuring out what direction I wanted to go, what part of cybersecurity I wanted to work in. And I mean, you can build on it, build layers, but you have to choose something to start with. So being patient enough with myself, and that's part of where the questions that I referred to earlier came in too, because one of the questions that I asked everybody that I talked to was, how did you get where you are? What was your path? And realized that there is no one path. Everybody that I talked to had a different path to get into cybersecurity and get into the role that they were in.
Our industry is so, you know, I think the paranoia and the distrust actually brings the industry together. And so it feels like a much smaller industry than it actually is. And there are plenty of people out there that will be more than happy to answer those type of questions, because they've been there trying to get into the industry before. And so I always try and make myself available when I can. You know, we've all got day jobs, we've all got other things that we need to do, but when we can find a time to give a bit of advice and do something. And quite honestly, that was one of the pushes for doing this panel, is that there's so many good stories and people need to hear them. And so, you know, hopefully this recording will help a lot of people hearing your stories and what it's taken for you all to get here. Gunnar, how about yourself?
For me, I found it was a huge mental game. Not hearing back from jobs you applied for, failing certifications, like it's really easy to get down on yourself and even like think about quitting. And then also just fear of the unknown. For me, I got out of the Army before officially retiring, so it was a big leap of faith. It was a big risk. So being able to just keep going, like not quit. Imposter syndrome can seep in, and you feel like, oh, is this what I should be doing? But I think just having a plan and sticking to it until you get that job is the key.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
finding ways to like finding ways to rebound after you have a failure and just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, look, you'll have a lot of failures, you know, throughout life. Generally, throughout your search, you definitely will. And if you can try and treat them as a learning experience and look at each one, yeah, it's no different. We do exactly the same in our role, right? There are positions we fill, there are positions we don't. There are clients that choose us to work with them. There are clients that go and choose another company, right? That happens. And so if you can look at everything, look at your failures and use them as an opportunity to grow and do better at the next one. You know, every interview is another chance to practice, right? So yes, you're going to be disappointed when you get some no's, but every no is closer to a yes. That's what I like to say.
Absolutely.
So yeah, keep your chin up and keep focused. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit from what everybody said. I think for me specifically, I think the biggest thing is education management. And what I mean by that is like, you don't know what you don't know. And kind of like Gunnar was saying, the unknown kind of hurts you. It's kind of like, what do I actually need to know to get this job? You know, and it's very hard to actually find training that'll actually prepare you for your entry level role, because every company is so different. The responsibilities could be different. And it's like, how do you actually prepare for that? And that for me was the biggest struggle. And just kind of how I dealt with it is like, you just have to accept it. It's like, you know, Marcus Aurelius has a famous quote: "It's no point getting upset over something you can't control." And you have to really get fixed on that and just realize, like, hey, do the best you can, find what you enjoy the most and what you take some of the top skills from, you know, the industry that they say, oh, you should know, you know, the foundations of this, and just focus on that. And when you get into the role, they'll let you know what you need to do next, and let your job tell you where your education should go.
Yeah, 100%. You'll see the people that you know, they've got the career path that you want, and you, especially within a business, if they've been there a while, you get to see how their career path actually worked, and you can get to learn off those people. Just as Joy reached out to people previously and talked to them and found out about their career path. I think we do have to remember that everybody's path is very different. But the more information you've got on that, the better you can prepare for the path that you really want to take. So on that, actually, in terms of preparation, you know, each of you had different careers before coming into cybersecurity. You know, you transitioned into it. It wasn't your first ever jobs. So I'm interested to hear what sort of skills or abilities or things that you took from your previous sort of career that really helped you transition into cybersecurity or helped you in that role. And I'm going to start with you, Joy, actually.
I would say people skills. I mean, your soft skills, and you hear people talk about soft skills and they don't always really explain what they are. But for me, the experience that I had in the call centers was a huge asset, because I was used to taking phone calls all day where people came in hot and heavy, yelling, cussing, you know, wanting to know your name and your information so they could report you to the CEO when they called them to complain, and being able to calm them down and figure out what the actual issue was. Because a lot of times they knew what their pain point was, but they didn't know what the actual issue was. So being able to get down into those details, and that has been a huge asset working in cybersecurity. And to kind of to build on that, when I first started working on my master's program, I had the opportunity to sit down and have lunch with the security director at the call center. And one of the things she said has just stuck with me. She said that she can teach people the company, she can teach them security, but you have to be able to get people to listen to you. She said, all the technical skills that you might have, if you don't have the ability to be able to speak to somebody and make them understand why they should care, then you're not really doing the job that you need to. So those people skills, soft skills, being able to talk and figure out what people need and how to explain to them why they should care.
Yeah, it's so important. Like cybersecurity people and teams have this kind of, like they're known as the team that says no, right? Whenever you want to do anything, it's like no, right? And then that's obviously not true. And the best people in our industry, when they do have to say no, don't say no, right? They find ways of discussing it and finding routes to get things done, and compromises. And to make those compromises, you do have to be able to have some empathy and understand some of the issues that they're going through. Because at the end of the day, let's face it, business runs a business. So if cybersecurity is going to stop business or make it hard for the company to actually make money and do what they're there for, then it's not going to succeed. So, having that empathy and understanding, I'm sure that's a really powerful attribute to have, especially when I cringe when I think, I've been in the customer service related roles, and so I'm overly polite to people. Even when I'm seething and something's wrong, I always remember that the person I'm talking to isn't the person that did it, right? And so to have to deal with that is, it's a horrible thing, but a great life lesson. So Gunnar, how about yourself? What did you think that you pulled from your previous career?
I think part of it would be having an analytical mind. There's a lot of stuff in music that you have to analyze as far as theory. I think that's a trait that really carries over to cybersecurity with analyzing malware. But as far as being able to get into cybersecurity, what helped me the most, I think, was networking. My past career, I have a huge network because I was at 5 or 6 duty stations. And it's hard to keep in touch with all the people that I met. However, one of my former Army coworkers works at the company I'm with now, and she was actually able to speak about my character and my work ethic to the hiring manager. And I feel like that is one part of me being able to successfully get the job at the company. I may have had to go to more rounds of interviews if someone didn't vouch for me. So networking is key.
Yeah, I think we forget that in previous careers, and I have discussions with a lot of candidates and just remind them, like, who do you know from your previous role? It doesn't mean necessarily you want to go back to that company and do cybersecurity there. I mean, you may do, but those people move on, they have other jobs, their career paths move, and somebody that you knew 5 years ago could now be in a position to give you a real helping hand in getting something else. And the whole analytics around music and thinking that way, which makes me laugh. We've got a penetration tester that he also has a band, and he played around once. I don't remember how it ended up. I remember him playing around once with turning musical notes coming out of a Nessa scan or something like that for different things. It was really random, but I mean, you can combine them. So there you go.
That's awesome. Very cool.
And Nick, how about you?
Yeah, so oddly enough, so like I mentioned before, a bulk of it was finished carpentry. And just like cybersecurity, there's a manual on the basics and the foundations of carpentry and cybersecurity, but there's no manual on the job. And no house is the same. No house is built the same. Not even 2 pieces of wood of the same wood species, they're not the same. Just like cybersecurity. So you have all these variables that are completely different every single time. And what it's really helped me is just constantly working with that diversity and not having a book, but just to kind of problem solve and create my own solutions and to make it work, not just good enough, but better than good enough. And I think that's really helped me go into cybersecurity, where, like I said, everything's different. Every system is different. You could have 2 Dell computers with Windows 10 and they behave completely differently for some reason. It makes no sense, but that's just the way it is. And, you could have 2,000 computers where endpoint security works just great, and there's 2 for some reason just doesn't work at all. Like, it doesn't make sense, but, Finished Carpenters really helped me prepare and get that mindset to expect the abnormal. And that's what cybersecurity is about. It's looking for those abnormal incidents and stuff like that, and analyzing events. So
Nice.
It's been real good.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's always good to remember not to assume, right? And when you're used to coming from a business where things are never the same, even when they look the same, it kind of forces you to think that way. Love that. Love that. Amanda, how about you? We got
Sorry,
Amanda?
I was muted. Sorry about that.
This is only 2 times in this whole thing so far. So look, we're golden.
Sorry about that. But I think one of the most useful skills has been when you're in QA, you definitely have to be able to sort of be a liaison or a translator between people who are very technical and people who are not at all. So I think one of the biggest skills and abilities that I've been able to translate over is being that liaison, being that person who can kind of communicate what's going on through all levels of the business. So I think that's been very, very helpful in my transition.
Yeah, communication is such an important, we see it written, written communication, strong verbal communication, but communication is important in every single role. And I hear about people that do sort of Toastmasters and, different things just to practice their communication skills. And it doesn't come naturally for everyone. So I think the more practice you can get, whether that's going out to networking events or, meeting people and forcing yourself into more conversations, the better it does in this industry. So yeah, that's an important attribute to have. Now, I'm conscious of the time, so I think we'll just do sort of one last question, and that's just to get each a tip from each of you, just your number 1 tip, and we'll start again with Joy. What's your number 1 tip for people struggling to get their break into cybersecurity?
Don't give up. It gets tough, and you definitely have those days when you feel defeated. Even when you're in the role, imposter syndrome was mentioned earlier, and that's definitely something that continues, or at least for me. But don't give up, because there are plenty of people out here, whether it's those of us who are newer to the industry or those who are veterans, who are willing to help and can be, an ear to listen, give some advice. Some you want to take, some you don't want to take, but at least it's advice.
It's
and
free,
there are a lot of
right?
resources.
You don't have to take it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes it's worth what you pay for it.
Yeah.
But that would just, that's my tip, is just don't give up.
Good. And Gunnar?
I had mentioned it before, but I'll reiterate, network. There's a lot of good things that can come out of it. You can gain mentors just by reaching out to people and ask for advice. That's a big thing that's helped me. I've had a mentor that helped me transition out of the Army, helped me with my resume, and just general things in cybersecurity. Yeah, networking and then having mentors that could cut off months or years of your journey to where you want to get to.
Yeah, 100%. It's okay. I think you can keep saying that. If everybody else says networking as well, I totally nod my head and agree. You can't say it enough. My business is networking. I don't think I'd have a business if I didn't network the way I do. And in our industry, it's so important. In every industry, it's important. But I think, like I say, if you're an entry-level person trying to get in, it's really about who you know and who can help you get past some of the gates, some of the bottlenecks, some of the issues that exist out there for our industry. Who can get you in front of somebody that cares and will have the time to look through your resume, and networking is how you go about doing that. Nick?
Yeah, those are two very good and important. That's probably, 1 and 2 from Joy and Gunnar. I guess my thing would just be, don't get emotionally attached to the journey, as hard as it is, because every second things change and you might have to completely scrap your idea and come up with a whole new game plan. But if you're kind of like putting your emotions into it, it's going to be very difficult for you to kind of just scrap your plan. You're going to kind of motivate yourself not to do that and be like, no, I'm too attached, I got to stick with it. And that's the definition of insanity, is trying the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So my biggest tip is just stay fluid and flexible and adapt as the situation, because let's face it, cybersecurity, you have to be able to be fluid and adapt with the industry. So a great start is doing it now.
Yeah, I think there's like, successful people never quit and all of these kind of things you hear. But the truth is it doesn't mean quitting completely. Sometimes there is a right time to look and say, right, I need to change what I'm doing. I need to not do it this way. I need to do it in a different way. I need to focus on trying to do this rather than this. So it's kind of that mini, you're not quitting completely. You're just looking at the little things that are working and aren't working and trying something new. Don't be scared to try something new. And Amanda, how about yourself?
I'm going to have to echo what Gunnar was saying. I definitely think that that networking is where it is. I also have found that cybersecurity professionals from entry level all the way up to CISO level are really excited to connect. So, if you just go on LinkedIn and just, you read an article that you really liked, find the person who wrote it and connect with them, and they'll most likely you'll end up having a conversation with them, and it's really, really helpful. It helps you break into the world. So that's definitely where I would say lean into that.
I agree. I think notes are so important when you're connecting with people, especially in our industry. Some of them get a lot of connection requests. Spending a little bit of extra time and popping a note in there. I just read your article. I love what you wrote. Anything like that. It's going to make people want to accept you and have you as part of their network. So, yeah, that's great. You all have given amazing answers. I think there's been so much to learn. Great tips at the end as well. I can't wait for us to also be doing this in person in Orlando at InfoSec World. Of course, we'll have done it by the time that people are listening to this. Hopefully it goes equally as smoothly as this has. So thank you so much. I'm going to leave up there all of our contact details. Please find us, ask us questions. I honestly think we could probably have spoken for another hour and a whole load more questions to actually ask. So who knows, if there's a call for it, then maybe we'll do another one. See what people think, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.